I'm joined now by artist Kelly Cole. Kelly, thank you for being here. I realized as I was introducing you, I just call you artist, but is there a specific name for what you do? Are you leather worker? I don't know. What is...
Yeah, that's a great question. Leather craftswoman.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Tell me when you first started making art with leather.
It was about 18 years ago is when I started. I transitioned from basketball and all sports into a more artistic realm of my life and lifestyle, and that's when I started kind of dabbling in it. And my mother was working at a leather shop, and so I kind of started to follow in that footstep and started to kind of apprentice under her and then another gentleman who ran the shop, and started to learn slowly, and it just, I really enjoyed it, so it stuck.
So what about the material itself made you say, I want to work with that, I want to make art from it?
I think because it's a natural product, and it's rugged. In a way, we've always said unforgivable, like when you're pounding on leather, like you can't erase it. So there's something permanent about it too as well that I've always really admired and kind of respected too as well.
That was going to be one of my questions. Do you have anxiety before you start a piece? Because you know there's kind of no turning back.
Yeah, no, you just make a lot of mistakes.
And are they just happy accidents, or
I
integrate them in, or how do you handle it?
Sometimes when I'm specifically the art of tooling on the leather, you can kind of hide it, but not always. And then when you get into the dyeing process, sometimes you can't. So you just start over. When you're sewing, there's definitely imperfections in the leather you can't hide. So you just start over and you mark it as a second or a clearance item or something like that when you do art shows and different, people love sales, but.
Yes, I'm one of those people. Okay, so I do want to talk about your process, but before we get there, tell me a little bit more about getting into it. So you apprenticed, and then did I read you went to Arizona? And tell me about that.
So I kind of worked for several years at a little shop in Nashville, Indiana, which is still running. It's an amazing shop. And they do all handmade leather goods. And so then I ended up going out into Jerome, Arizona to run the same company's shop out there. So it was a sister shop, so there was a connection there that made it an easy transition, and I ran that shop for a few years out there and had a great experience, a whole nother level of the art, but also business too as well.
So in addition to running the shop, are you creating what you are selling at that point?
I am one of the creators, not the only sole one.
Yeah.
Still seamstresses back in Indiana were making things, and we had some out there too as well.
Wow. Now, having gone from sports, especially collegiate sports, into this new artistic world, did you have to learn all new skills? Did you know how to sew? Did you know, was it all completely foreign to you, or did you have some of the skills working up to it?
It was all new, pretty much, I feel like. I didn't dabble much into art at all. So the sewing was a lot later, and that was a new skill that slowly developed, but it was more starting with the tooling and belt making and some of the more primitive, basic forms of the leather of creating, I guess I would say, and then kind of move on from there.
Tell me about tooling. What is the process? How do you begin?
It's just taking a rawhide piece of the russet leather before it's ever dyed. It is treated by like a tannery or hide house and wetting it. And different artists probably have some different process. And then because it wettens it, you can then stamp and like indent all different designs. You can carve with like a knife, kind of. It'd be like a leather specific tooling knife.
Yeah.
And create whatever designs you want based upon the stamping tools, designs, and stuff like that, or just by hand what you want to create too as well.
Do you have to really think through a design, knowing that it is unforgiving?
Yeah.
Are you really thinking it through, or do you sort of just go with it?
Yeah.
What is that mental process like? Because to me, that would be too much anxiety.
I think that's a really good question, and I think as time went, I would just create. I just would, and I think that was the beauty of why I enjoyed it, because there was no set way I had to do it. I kind of would measure out a couple holes and then just go and create. But it would sequence, but I would just create it throughout, like maybe one inch pattern and then duplicate it or something like that.
Yeah.
They were all so one of a kind, and I would go back and I'll duplicate things for customers, but usually I just start tooling.
And just see what happens.
And just kind of create it as it, just see what happens.
Now, after the tooling process, then you dye, is that correct? So tell me how
Yep.
that works.
So I just use it's a specific leather. I use an oil-based dye, and you use some water and sponging, and there's different technique with that. And then you just dye it, and then you have to let it dry. And then I buff it out so it makes it more shiny, and it kind of sets it. And then after that, there's a waxing, and then there's what you call an antiquing. So that's this like kind of a black gel that sets into the leather, so it kind of makes that design pop.
Sure.
So it shows up a little bit more.
So let's say you're doing a belt. Start to finish, how long does that typically take, especially knowing that you have to, there are lots of steps.
Yeah, so a tooled belt would probably an hour to an hour and a half for one full one, start to finish. And I don't ever usually do it that way because I do them more in runs, but I think I've tried to average out about an hour, hour and a half.
Now, after the dyeing process, what happens next?
Then the antiquing, and then drying, and then there's some buffing on the edges, and then you measure it out depending on size. And
Okay, this might be a really stupid question, but I
Yeah,
don't know, so I'm going to ask. Okay, again, say you're making, we'll say a bracelet this time. Does the bracelet come to you and then you stamp, or are you making the bracelet? Are you sewing and doing the clasp and that type of thing?
Right. No, that's a good question. You don't know.
Yeah.
I put the snaps on it. I do all the manufacturing parts to
Okay.
my products. So at the very end of the belt, which is a good question, or the bracelet, I put like the snap on it,
Yeah.
or the buckle, the keeper, the rivets to attach it all, and the finished product. Yeah, I order those parts and then I manufacture it at the end. Yeah. No, that's a
Yeah.
good question.
So how much of what you do is just what you think is beautiful, and how much is commission work? How much is it people coming to you and saying, this is specifically what I have in mind?
I've gotten away from custom work quite a bit over the years, just from a time aspect. So I just do mainly all creative, kind of standard products that have just been classic sellers over the years. And then I do art shows and some website, but I just kind of show up and I'm like, this is what I've got.
Yeah.
And then I'll take some commission work as off season when I have a little bit more free time.
I thought it was so interesting to read that you very specifically decided when you moved back to Indiana that you didn't want a brick and mortar, that you really did want to kind of travel around. What was the impetus for that decision?
I think because I had seen the ebb and flow of a shop, and just having a storefront is so many blessings, and but there's also a lot of stressors and hardship in the sense of month to month, and you're solid, you're there, you stay there. And I think, to me, I thought this is a good opportunity for me to be transitional and to be able to travel and do the art shows. It was just another piece of being an entrepreneur that I was like, let's just try it out.
Yeah.
Why not give it a shot? Because you can end, I mean, there's always a start and an end to most things.
Sure. Tell me what your favorite type of piece is to make. Do you have a favorite?
I think I would go back to the original thing I started making was belts.
Yeah.
I just still love doing belts and bracelets. So
And I've seen your picture frames, and what makes you try something new? Do you get bored, or is it just curiosity, or how do you continue to try new things?
yeah, when I can kind of tap into the more creative realm for me, like I'll just kind of think of like what other is a functional piece of art that somebody could somewhat functionally use, but also just aesthetic too. And
Yeah.
I'll just kind of think, and then maybe a year passes and I finally make it. And then it starts to sell, and I'll start producing it more and more. And then I'll kind of be like, okay, this is kind of a staple product that I can see in the business. I don't tend to just make it and then stop. And then I try to find solid pieces that I can continue to kind of make that would be interesting to people.
Sure.
And functional. Functional is also
A big part
important
of
to me.
Well,
Yeah.
and I guess that makes a lot of sense, because if you're going to use a material like leather,
Yeah.
then by all means it should be functional as well. You've mentioned, running a business and being an entrepreneur. Does that take some of the joy out of it, or is that why you do it, because you want to get your art into the world?
I like that part of it. I really do. I think that's kind of more the drive of me to the business part, that I think I don't want to just make it and look at it and create my own like, I want other people to enjoy it and to use it.
Yeah.
Like, sell it and get rid of it so I can make more. Like, I like that process. And the business part is challenging, but I just really enjoy that part of it too.
Over the years, what do you think you've learned the most about your craft and about yourself?
That is a good question. The craft is ever changing. I think that I have so much to learn as a leather worker, and I will always, I think, because there's so many art festivals and other artists I come into contact with that just do amazing. And I'm like, I have no idea how they do all that.
Yeah.
Because it's a different method, it's different leather, it's a different product. And I could learn so much from other artists and their process and how they work with leather, because it's so different and there's just so many different styles to it. And I hope to, evolve as time goes. And I've learned about myself is that what started as maybe like a filler in my life became such a core piece of value that is in my life too, of just as an artist. And I think I've learned that it's something that I am so appreciative that kind of fell into my life, but then has remained a consistent no matter what season I've been in. I've always kind of fallen back onto leatherworking. It's been really good.
Kelly, you have been so delightful. I think your journey is amazing, and your work is beautiful, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I really appreciate it.